All right, guys. Today we're going to be installing Ubuntu 20.04 server. So we're installing this on VirtualBox. So I'm going to go ahead and just unpause this and let the virtual machine boot up. So here we go. We got the purple boot up screen. It's going to go through it's going to give us some output, and as it's booting up, most of this doesn't matter. And here we go. It's coming up a little bit more, and there we go. Here's our installer. So we can select whichever language we prefer. In this case, we're going with English. So we can say update to the, apparently there's a new installer available. So we could continue without updating. Let's just do that because it's more simple for this. We could use the new updater, but let's just keep it simple and use what was on the install disk. I mean, this was only a couple months back anyways. So let's move right ahead. Just use the current installer. All right, we're going with DHCP by default. We could configure static. We could configure bonding, all kinds of nice stuff. This VM just has a default config, and it has DHCP anyways. This is what we're going to be doing, nothing more elaborate. So going to continue on. No proxy address, and default mirror. Mostly we're picking defaults here. So we could choose to use LVM groups or encryption. We're not doing that. No custom storage layout. Just a really simple thing. We're going to use the entire disk. There are no other OSs on this. And this VM only exists for this purpose anyways. So I'm going to tab on down to, I mean, you could probably, anyway, we're just going to go down here. Hit done. All right, there we go. Let's see. Move right along. I'm going to say continue to confirm the destructive action. Continue. All right, so now we have to name our server. We're not going to be too creative with the name. We're going to say Ubuntu. Whoops. You know what? That's a terrible name. I'm not going to name it after the. Let's just call it test server 1. There we go. All right. Sorry. That is my name. All right. I'm just going to use user 1 to not be creative. Server's name will be test server 1, and username will be user 1, and normally I just make my name user 1 as well, but I mean, I would literally just type user 1, make it identical. But for the sake of demonstration, I should probably fill this out. User 1. All right, there we go. Put a password in. I'm going to put a weak password that I use for like testing in lab boxes. Real box, you'd want a stronger password. There we go. And it's a server, so can't imagine wanting a server without SSH. That's generally how you'd manage them. You're not going to want to manage it from the console. You theoretically could, but generally pretty much every server I've ever worked on has had SSH. So we're not importing an identity, but that's pretty important. We're not installing any extra services on here. This actually comes with a lot of extra things you could install, like Apache, MySQL or MariaDB, Kubernetes, all kinds of different options. We're not installing any of them. But the one thing we are definitely installing is OpenSSH. You need that just to manage the server. You could theoretically go do without it, but realistically, every server is generally just going to have an SSH server, and that's what that gives you. So, yep, let's move right along here. Hit done. All right, yeah, and this is what I was talking about. You can choose micro K8s, that's Kubernetes, and we have all of these great things. Docker, PowerShell for Linux now. Yep, Linux does have PowerShell now. So, let's see, Heroku, Judy, yeah, a lot of nice stuff. We're going to skip it all, hit done, and just let this install. All right, so it finished. Installation complete. Excellent. Let's reboot. That was pretty quick. So, yeah, it's telling us to remove the medium. It failed to unmount it, which completely doesn't matter. Looks like it did successfully unmount it for me. Or it didn't unmount it. The system didn't unmount it, I guess. But, yeah, it removed the media for me. So once I reboot, it's not going to reboot from CD. It's going to boot from the hard disk. So let's reset this and see. Reset. And there we go. Our server is booted up. Well, I mean, technically it booted all the way up to login prompt. It's still loading some more things and giving us more output. I guess it just wanted to give us a login prompt as soon as possibly could, even though it's still doing stuff, which is fine. I guess that's kind of good. It lets you log in, but it's a little bit messy. So, yeah, that's fine. Anyways, here we go. Let's try logging in as user 1. User 1 is my password. And there we go. We're in. Gives us this nice little welcome screen saying welcome to Ubuntu 2004 LTS, the long-term support. So, yeah, system load, pretty low. 94 processes running by default. Gives us our IP address, the interface name, swap usage, memory usage, disk space usage. That's an interesting one to look at. So let's look at our hard disk. So we've used 6.1 gigs. So that's how big the installation was. We could probably trim a lot of that down. What else? I could swear there was a swap file, I think, but anyways, the disk was, I gave it 25 gigs, but it's not gonna, the actual file for the virtual disk isn't gonna be that big. It's gonna expand as needed. Yeah, I think it's possible to trim this down. You can remove see how are my partitions here. Yeah, so yeah, I have a whole nother article, and I'm going to do a whole nother video on trimming down disk space. On that's like a whole nother thing. I wrote an article on Ubuntu disk space for the server and the desktop. I compared them both, and I'm going to do a whole nother demo video just on that. But yeah, you can definitely, as I remember, there's a swap file that you can actually remove from this. It was either the server or the desktop version that had a swap file that you could just remove, and it would it decreases the disk size. So you technically don't need. I mean, you would need the 6.1 gig drive to install the system, but then you can reduce that usage afterwards down to like 2 gigs or slightly over 2 gigs, and then you could probably find other things to trim out too. So, any case, yeah, this is our system. So, we can grep for SSH, and we see SSHD is running. So, that's how we would normally get in. Now, this server is behind a NAT, so we can't actually SSH to the IP address. There is another. I'm gonna just do this just because it's a server, and if we don't SSH into it, I don't feel like this video is gonna really be complete. So let's just try this. Settings. Let's see if I can even change the network settings while the machine is running. So really, you want to forward ports. So this is outside of Ubuntu in the VirtualBox machine. So since this is on a NAT, so you can't just SSH to it from my desktop. You would need to have some translation of the ports. Normally, you SSH to port 22. So let's take a look at that actually. All right. Look at and how about that? We don't have NetTools by default. Let's install that. Sudo apt install NetTools. The things they don't include. They might have the modern equivalent of netstat, but I'm using netstat. Just because I remember it off the top of my head and everything. But yeah, all right, here we go. Netstat, and there we go. Port 22 is in use. That's our SSH. So when you SSH, by default, it goes to port 22. Now, on my desktop, I'm going to set it up so that I can SSH to a certain port on my desktop, and it's going to translate that to port 22 on the VM. So let's see here. Go into settings for the virtual machine, network, advanced, port forwarding, and I'm going to add a port. And you don't need to put the actual IPs in, host or guest IP, just the host and guest port. So guest port is 22. The guest is my my guest virtual machine, and that port we just saw SSH is running on port 22. Host port. Let's just set this to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so SSH. All right, so set that in. All right, there we go. Let's open up a terminal here. So this is from my desktop. So let's try SSH. So we're going to SSH to the local host on that port 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that should forward it over to my virtual machine here. And that would work regardless of it would forward regardless of the OS, but it'll connect to whatever port you happen to have running or whatever's running on port 22. So similar method if you're running any other Linux distro or whatever else. So 127.0.0.1, that's the local host. And I believe it's a -P for the port 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and yep, invalid argument. Was that a lowercase p? There we go. All right, so yeah, host key is host key verification failed. Let's see here. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna move this. I just don't want to look at anything cryptographic on video because I'm not paying attention to what may or may not matter or what may be in there. Anyways, I'm gonna temporarily move this file, move known hosts, just out of the way, and then I'm gonna move it back. So here we go. Now let's SSH in, say yes, and there we go. Now we're in our server. Look at that. We're on test-server 1. All right. Now, yeah, so where's exit out of here? My local host, my desktop is zippy zap. So SSH in, like that, a lowercase -p, the port number, and then the IP, which is the IP of the local host, which will, so long as I'm hitting that port 12345 that we set up, it's going to forward it to port 22 on my virtual machine. So I use SSH to connect to 12345 on the local host, and that will magically get forwarded over to port 22 on test-server 1. So there we go. Let's see here. So yeah, you can see this is a nicer interface. You don't want to manage your server like this. Like this, you can't copy and paste. You can't copy something from here and paste it into your into like a text editor or whatever else. You can't copy something from a web browser and paste it in here. You just can't do a lot of stuff. So it's pretty terrible. This is a horrible interface. You have to type everything in. You can't. Yeah, just no copying and pasting. You could install the VirtualBox tools, but only if you have a GUI, and even then, I mean it's all right if you have a GUI, but as is on the command line, this console is terrible. It's usable. You can get things done, get things set up, but yeah, look at this. This is so much better. Yeah, this is way better to work with. And I could open as many of these as I want to connect to this. So I could be like VIing a file in this one and doing something else in another terminal. And it's just so much better. So this is how you would want to manage your server. And yeah, you could say who, and notice you'll notice the two connections. One of these is from the console, and one of them is from SSH. So there we go. So hopefully this video was interesting and maybe even helpful to someone. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. If you want to see more videos like this, click the little bell icon. If you didn't like the video, leave a comment down below telling me what you didn't like. If you did like it, tell me what you did like. Any comments, suggestions, questions, whatever else. I try to respond to all comments, but it doesn't mean I always will, and not always in a timely manner. But yeah, definitely I do want to know what you think. So yeah, please do leave a comment. And thanks for watching.